Welcome to Lincoln Fire and Rescue. I'm your host, Dale Johnson. In 2015, Lincoln Fire and Rescue paramedics responded to almost 20,000 medical emergency calls. That's 55 a day, every week of every month. And Lincoln needs more firefighters in 2017. They need more paramedic firefighters, and we'll clarify those terms. We get into that today with Fire Chief Michael Despain, who brought along firefighter paramedic Chris Gutierrez and Jamie Pospisil. Jamie is an LFR Captain Training Officer. Chris, Jamie, Chief, thank you all very much for coming in.
Thank you.
There are EMTs, there are firefighter paramedics, and there are medics?
Well, all of our firefighters are firefighters.
That's right.
And then they either fall into two categories. They're either EMT, which is a more basic level of care, or they're more advanced, which is paramedic. And so right now, the need and the push right now that we're talking about is that higher level of training and education, which we would call paramedics.
Right now you have adequate number of firefighters in training and or a waiting list to fill those?
If we looked at our allocated staffing, we're about 30 positions short already. So we need those positions. Those could be either or, but what we've looked at the data is basically it said really paramedics are the better bang for the buck in terms of the service back to the community, return on investment. And so those 30 positions are what we need. Right now we're hiring, and we have an academy starting in probably about 2 weeks. Unfortunately, we'll only have about 8 people in that academy. By the time that academy graduates, we'll lose about 6, 7, or 8 people due to attrition, just retirements. They'll take another job somewhere else. And so unfortunately, when we look at our numbers, and our desperation is really just to get, it's not necessarily new firefighters on the books, it's really just get us caught up to the ones that we're already allocated to have. But there's some bottleneck of processes we need to do. When you get so far behind, it's not just hire a bunch more. They have to go through an academy that requires resources and training. They have to precept, and that's what Jamie has a specialty in, is getting them through their training. And there's only so many people that can stop what they're doing to train in addition to provide service. And so we have these little hurdles that we need to get through. But right now our focus is try and get as many paramedics, 30 paramedics if you will, 20 right away to get us caught back up. So then we're just hiring for attrition.
All right, the purpose of this is to entice people, to get people interested in wanting to become a paramedic in Lincoln Fire and Rescue. First of all, let's use me. Do I have to have some type of medical degree already and or some level of medical training before I apply and want to be a paramedic in LFR?
Well, right now we are only recruiting for paramedics.
All right.
So you have to have that basic level of training and education and certification, licensure, if you will, to be a paramedic. Then we'll bring you in, and we'll not only treat you how to be the firefighter piece, which is the other half of that equation, but also just because you're a paramedic, Lincoln Fire and Rescue has some very specific strategies and skill level that we use, because our numbers for the service we provide to the community is a little higher here than maybe other communities, and so we have to kind of push them a little bit harder than you would say in just a basic academy. And real street life is always different than the academics, and so that's the difference. However, part of our goal today, I hope, is to kind of get information out to the viewers in terms of, if you think you want to be a paramedic, we have people here that are experts that can tell you suggestions on how you might go about being a paramedic. So we're trying to put the word out to medics that are available to come in and take tests and go through a current recruitment, but at the same time, maybe people that are not quite paramedics, they may not even know about it, but have some interest in maybe becoming a paramedic.
Jamie, how many years for you?
13 years with Lincoln.
And Chris?
6.
All right, do you remember your first call?
Yes.
What was it?
It was a rescue alarm out on North 84th from Station 9. So rescue alarm is with patients trapped inside vehicles.
Chris?
I do not. No, I do not, unfortunately.
But you've had plenty since?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You train, you go through the training process. What does the beginning look like when you start training for a paramedic?
With Lincoln Fire?
Yes.
Once you're hired on, you will go through an academy that can range in duration just depending on the amount of recruits in the class and the certifications that they already have. But we provide a fire and ALS academy for our new incumbents. And Once you successfully complete that academy, you will start precepting. So you will have a probationary period where you go through a fire task book and have specific tasks that you have to complete with your captain. And then with precepting, you will spend at least 28 shifts in a very intensive program working with preceptors that will evaluate your performance and make sure that you know our protocols, the Lincoln Fire protocols, and you're able to make some of those critical decisions in a timely fashion and provide the effective and safe patient care we're looking for.
Explain preceptor for me.
Okay, so Chris is actually one of our preceptors, and it's an individual that not only has a passion for serving the community and running calls, but they enjoy teaching others and training with others. There's a task book that they go through that is very labor intensive, right?
Yes.
They ensure that the individual knows our protocols, they understand when to apply the protocols, they understand the signs and symptoms of different emergencies. So it's just a mentorship phase. So they're evaluating, but also they're coaching these new employees. And they're just ensuring that they have the resources they need to be successful in our system.
Talk about a day in the life of a preceptor.
We start out just kind of getting them warmed up, introducing them to our system. I think it's the first 2 days they kind of just evaluate how we run calls, the two preceptors. So they'll ride one day with me and then one day with the other paramedic preceptor. And then we'll go into about 2 other phases, so there's 3 phases total, and that's where we evaluate them on every call or medical run that they run for the rest of the 26 shifts. So, but I think for the preceptors, it's kind of like you're trying to train them in, again, our protocols, how we run things, and then try to train them in our work habits and how we can be professional paramedics and provide the best care that meets our standard.
Is this unique, Chief? The structure of LFR unique in some way?
Well, the way we run some of the business end it is a little unique, but the way we run the fire-based EMS is not. It's very traditional. Precepting it's a very common practice throughout. The difference is we have some restrictions on how tight, due to the municipal code, how tight probation is, and so we have to cram a lot in the 28 shifts where other agencies have a little more time to relax. So that may be something we look at kind of fixing to give us a little more time down the road. But we're able to do it, so it's not the best way, but it does get us there. And the reality is you can go through a training program and people will tell you how to do A, B, and C. But when you hit the streets, there's shortcuts into, you know that B is coming and C is coming. You're more efficient with your movements. You're more efficient with your requests for either staffing to help you and how they help you. So patient care becomes improved. There's not really a course for that. So just like a police officer will come in and they may pass the academy and they get hired by Lincoln Police Department, but they have to go through an FTO, a field training officer program, where they work with someone that's done it to say, yeah, you have the knowledge and you have the skills, but now I have to teach you how to apply those in the proper way so that the skill and the outcome is what we want. You want you to not just treat the patient, but save the patient. And so that's where the preception comes in. And Chris is talking about these different medics that have been in the system for a long time. They know a lot. There's very few calls they go to where they're fooled, where they don't see what's happening and they know how to treat it quicker than someone who may just be out of school. And so by partnering with them, we get people up to speed quicker, because we don't, just because you graduate from the academy doesn't mean you're ready to go out and make life or death decisions. They need to work with senior employees that have demonstrated success over many years. They have a lot of lessons learned, and then they impart that so that that bar is a little bit higher for people that, so when the medic comes to your home to treat you, it's not somebody that's one day out of the academy. They've had oversight.
And they have to be able to play with others. I was privileged to go on calls recently, and I watched a 4-person team go into a building, a medical call, and they each had their own assignments. And I watched one individual filling out forms, asking another resident in the building about medications. Someone else was setting up a monitor. Someone else was in calm conversation with the patient, asking questions, asking background, the other individual was doing something else. It was a concert. It really was. And I could tell that these four had been working together, knew what each other was about to do, what they needed to do next, how to stay out of each other's way. And I was privileged to be able to stand back and watch this happen. And it is a concert. They do it so well. That comes with experience. What do you like about it, Jamie?
What do I like about being a paramedic?
About being a paramedic?
You know, Chris and I have actually talked about this quite a bit. We firmly believe in our opportunity to serve. And what I enjoy the most is those patients that are critically ill, that maybe you're in cardiac arrest, or a pediatric patient that is in has a traumatic injury, and you're thinking the outcome's going to be very poor. But with our knowledge, skills, and abilities, we can change the outcome. And that moment where they come back to the station and visit you a couple days later, or they come a couple months later, and you realize, gosh, they're still alive, they're here, they're doing great, and their family's just there thanking you. I mean, I remember a 3-year-old coming into the station and telling me I was his guardian angel. And, it just doesn't get any better than that. It really doesn't.
The guys at Station 8 got brownies from the Johnson house. So we treated them royally. Frustrations though, Chris? Frustrations that come with your job as a paramedic?
Yeah, I would. So I'm downtown on 18th and Q Street, and I would say that, and I've talked to a lot of guys about this. We see people in their worst moments. We see people lose family members. That is very hard from the sense of the individual passed away, and that's sad. But to see the family kind of go through that first realization of what's going on, that can be pretty hard. And if you see that multiple days in a row, it can get pretty draining. Just from seeing the families experience it. And if you had similar situations like that happen to you, you can sympathize or empathize with what they're going through. And then I would say the second hardest thing is the different socioeconomics we see, like between the populations, the children, and what they're exposed to, and just knowing that you want to do more, but you're kind of limited in some ways.
Which brings up another thought. What wears down a paramedic more? Types of calls, those heart-wrenching ones you talk about, or the number of calls? You can pack in more than a dozen calls in a shift, or more in a shift. Number of calls, types of calls, Jamie?
This can vary with the individual, but the calls that wore me out is just some of the very basic calls, non-emergent calls that didn't require critical thinking on my part. And then having a lot of those over a period of time. So you're running maybe 20 calls that are not so emergent. Those can become a little bit repetitive and mundane.
Chris?
I would say the same exact thing. In addition to that, because we have such a high standard for our paramedics, with the preceptorship and making sure that when they leave our mentorship, that they're ready. And every day we expect, a high standard for our paramedics. That is what the community should expect from us as well. But she talks about going on kind of these repetitive calls with the stubbed toes or the cough and whatnot, and then having to basically on a switch, when it really matters and really counts, you have to kind of be dialed in and make sure that all cylinders are hitting. So I would say that the combination of the two is kind of what can be very draining.
And you do this in an 8-minute period of time from call to arrive on scene.
Or less.
Or less. The fact that you're sitting there, you go from hearing a call, the siren, the tones go off, you hear it. So then you start to click, and I could almost see it in the minds of the men that I had a chance to sit there. They're processing everything. We've got somebody looking up location. We've got someone else checking the call, the type of call, make sure they heard it correctly, and has the information changed. Because I know from listening to initial calls coming in from someone on the scene, the spouse of someone, they'll call and provide information, and then, oh, that's not right. We're not on the second floor, we're on the third floor, or the address is different. We went to a call where the address was just one address off, and so we had to double check and make sure all this is going on as we're rolling, we're rolling down the street in this huge apparatus. And it's a lot going on, and they do it, and it's like the duck. You know, above the surface, it's very calm, but underneath, they're paddling.
One of the analogies I like to make is if you've ever had someone play a joke on you, and you walk around the corner, and they jump at you and scare you, and you feel that your heart race and kind of that adrenaline rush. And that's really what these firefighters and firefighter medics get almost every time. Now, just like Jamie said, when you've been scared a bunch of times, and it was probably for a very low emergent call, something that because some people use the 911 system in lieu of primary care, traditional care, that becomes frustrating. But for them, it's that adrenaline rush. Some people like it, that's why they get into the job. But after a while, you don't like it as much, and you still have to do it. And like Chris said, every single time you don't know, is this the call where someone's probably using the system wrong, or is this the one where seconds matter? They don't have the choice to say, well, I think I'm going to slow down on this one. They have to be on their game every time, because if someone dies or there's a significant medical issue and they attribute it back to level of care, quality of care, then their license and their, basically their job is on the line. And so that's unfortunate. It's not the way we want to do it, but it's the reality of advanced life support throughout the United States. And so there's not too many jobs, including mine, where if I miss something by a second or two, it's, the world's not going to end. They miss it by a second or two and people die. Conversely, no one comes into my office and says, thanks for making that decision 1 second sooner because you saved a life. They get that. And so that's the reward, but also kind of the challenge that they face. And so they're way too humble. They're not going to say that. But there's so much more to just the fact that you come to the station and you want to sit down and finish a meal. Can't do it. You want to take a shower because you've been out of fire. Can't do it. They are at the beck and call of that tone when it goes out.
We were filling out paperwork, and a call came out. So we just left it right there. And I was amazed at how when you have back-to-back-to-back calls, how you have to compartmentalize each call to know how to fill out the paperwork and to get it, because you may not be back to the station quickly. What's the process to apply? What's a good starting place? The website?
Yeah, well, the Human Resources City of Lincoln should have this recruitment up here fairly quickly, and we know that we're going to do written tests on March 6th and 7th, either day that the applicants can choose that works best in their schedule. So we know that kind of working backwards, we're trying to get that up as quickly as possible, but we know that's coming. And this recruitment is really for both people that are maybe just finished their medic school and they're looking for that first job, to the people that are in a fire service agency already, and we'll bring you over as a firefighter medic. Because you've already had that experience, we can do a shorter academy, pay a little extra money, because the return on investment is you'll hit the streets sooner, and that's better for the taxpayer, so we try and reward that if we can. But the reality is, the long-term look at Lincoln Fire and Rescue is we need to increase numbers. We're also looking to increase diversity, so we, kind of reach those segments of the population that, better understand the challenges in the segments that Chris was talking about, that socioeconomic challenges. And so we're trying to really get the word out to people that, are a medic and they're interested in coming to Lincoln Fire and Rescue, and maybe those people that aren't quite paramedics yet, maybe they don't even know about it, and this is the first time they're hearing about it. So we get the word out to them so they maybe cue some interest, and then they can reach out and do their research to find out more. Certainly you can contact us, but these people are the expert in the local area of where to go, how to get it, to come into the system.
And what's the schedule of a paramedic? Does it change when you're a rookie? Does it get better day hours? I guess what I mean by better.
They'll go through the academy, which is kind of your 8 to 5 Monday through Friday schedule. That's just till they get training. But once they hit the street, they're on the traditional shift schedule like we see most firefighters work. And that's a typically 24-hour shift. Sometimes it's longer because it's 5 minutes to quitting time. If your relief isn't there and a call comes in, you got to go. And there's nothing you can't just say, well, I'm not going to go. You have to go. So sometimes it's longer. We have overtime shifts. We have special events where we need to staff up additional units. A day like today is a good example where we have additional workload, and so they will work. So traditionally it's a 24-hour shift. and then they get their 24 hours off, and then they're back on 24, and so it's the cycle rotating. But there are people like Jamie, which will step up and go into 40-hour positions long term because she's senior and she's an expert in training, and so she has a different schedule than Chris does right now. But before long, we're going to get Chris into training, and so he's going to not like me for that. But that's okay.
Well, we're chatting on a day where it's wet, it's cold, it's slushy, changing conditions. We could have had more snow, sleet, ice. Temperature could have been colder. It could have been a mess. So in a way, we're lucky that it wasn't worse, but still, it adds to the complexity of the life of a firefighter and the life of a paramedic.
Yeah.
So get onto the website or talk to a firefighter, paramedic, and tap into their experience and see what it's like.
Yeah.
Be a good place to start.
Contact us. We have more than just the people here. We have got about a dozen people that are happy to answer questions, give you advice. Everybody came from different backgrounds and different methods to get to LFR. There's not any one way to get here other than you have to be a paramedic because that's what we need. But lots of paths to LFR, so
All right.
feel free to reach out.
So we hope we have enticed someone to be able to sign up and be a paramedic for Lincoln Fire and Rescue. Chris Gutierrez, Jamie Pospisil, Chief, good to have you in again. We'll do it
Thank
again
you.
on the radio.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching today on Lincoln Fire and Rescue.